They say Hollywood is a kingdom built on fame, but behind its brightest lights lie the darkest grudges. And after more than 4 decades in the industry, Keanu Reeves, the man the world calls gentle, humble, almost impossibly kind, has finally reached a breaking point. For years, rumors whispered through studios, casting rooms, and awards ceremonies. Rumors that 6 legendary actors had crossed a line so deep that Keanu Reeves, the calm oak tree of Hollywood, quietly made a vow: never again, never again would he stand beside them, never again would he share a set, a frame, or even the same oxygen in a rehearsal room. And now, at 61, he has finally allowed the truth to surface. The list is real, the stories are real, and the reasons are far more explosive than anyone expected. Because these 6 names didn't just challenge him, they humiliated him, endangered him, and in some cases, destroyed all respect he once carried for them. Names that shaped Hollywood. Names whispered with admiration and fear. Names like Alec Baldwin, whose clash with Keanu sparked one of the coldest silent wars the industry has ever seen. A feud built not on jealousy, but on public humiliation and reckless behavior Keanu could never forgive. And that is only the beginning. Today, we open the door Keanu kept closed for 3 decades. And once you step into this story, you'll never look at Hollywood the same way again. So now, after peeling back every layer of this story, after uncovering the 6 actors Keanu Reeves quietly vowed never to work with again, one final truth becomes clearer than ever. These rivalries are not about conflict. They are about character. Keanu Reeves, the man the world sees as gentle, gracious, almost impossibly humble, has survived the darkest corners of Hollywood not by fighting, but by choosing who he refuses to become. And these 6 names stand as reminders of that choice. In a world fueled by ego, impulse, chaos, and cruelty, Keanu chose integrity. He chose stillness. He chose compassion. And every silent refusal he made, every film he turned down, every event he walked away from, every partnership he politely declined, was a quiet declaration of the values he holds sacred, values Hollywood rarely talks about, values the world rarely sees, values that define him far more deeply than any blockbuster he has ever starred in. Because behind the cameras, behind the scripts and interviews, behind the legend of John Wick and the myth of Neo, Keanu Reeves remains something Hollywood desperately needs. A man who proves that success means nothing if you lose your humanity along the way. And as the industry continues to evolve, as scandals rise and fall, as careers explode and collapse, Keanu stands steady, untouched by chaos, protected by the very boundaries he built through these 6 unforgettable encounters. So now the question turns to you. Were these rivalries justified, or do they reveal a darker truth about Hollywood? A truth we only glimpse through stories like these? Tell us in the comments which actor surprised you the most. And of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into the hidden side of Hollywood. Among the 6 names, Keanu Reeves finally allowed the world to glimpse Alec Baldwin was the most shocking. Not because they battled for the same roles, not because they envied each other's fame, but because Baldwin committed the one act Keanu Reeves considers unforgivable: public humiliation coupled with reckless behavior that endangers everyone around him. Their story didn't begin with fireworks. It began quietly, almost too quietly. Back in the late 1990s, when both men were rising in prestige and respect across Hollywood, Keanu was known for discipline, humility, perfect composure. Baldwin was known for the exact opposite, a volcanic temper, unpredictable moods, and a storm-like presence that made producers whisper behind closed doors. Keanu noticed it immediately, not because Baldwin targeted him, at first he didn't, but because Baldwin treated the set like a battlefield, a place where ego came first and professionalism came last. To Keanu, who valued calmness as an almost sacred principle, Baldwin symbolized everything an actor should never become. But the breaking point came in 2003 at a private industry roundtable. A director criticized Baldwin lightly. Nothing dramatic, just a creative disagreement. And then the room froze. Baldwin erupted. He pointed at the actors around him, his voice sharp enough to slice the air. Some of you don't even deserve to be in this room. And then he looked directly at Keanu Reeves. Not a glance, not a passing look. A deliberate, targeted stare. For Keanu, this wasn't insult. It was disrespect. The deepest wound a reserved man can receive. A wound he never spoke about openly, yet never forgot. Years later, in a rare Japanese interview, Keanu finally let a crack appear in his calm armor. He said softly, "Once someone shows you contempt, you don't forget it." Insiders knew instantly who he meant, and as time went on, Baldwin's reputation only worsened. Physical altercations, legal disputes, public meltdowns, and finally, the tragedy on this set of Rust. To Keanu, none of this was a surprise. It was confirmation. Confirmation that Baldwin wasn't just difficult. He was dangerous. Back in 2011, Keanu reportedly told a producer, "Chaos isn't a talent. Chaos destroys talent." A line that echoed through the industry like a private warning. Since then, every attempt to place them together in a movie has failed because Keanu refuses. Not loudly, not dramatically, just firmly, quietly, absolutely. They haven't spoken in over 15 years. They don't greet each other at events. They avoid standing in the same photo frame. Their silence toward each other has become one of Hollywood's most well-kept open secrets. And Baldwin is just the first name on Keanu's list. If Alec Baldwin wounded Keanu Reeves through humiliation, then Shia LaBeouf did something even worse in Keanu's eyes. He turned the sacred space of filmmaking into a circus. Keanu Reeves believes a film set is a temple, a place where discipline, collaboration, and respect allow stories to come alive. But Shia was the exact opposite of that philosophy. Their tension didn't grow over years, it snapped into place instantly. It began in 2006, when both were attending the same studio workshops. Shia, already infamous for impulsive antics, suddenly interrupted a discussion and mocked veteran actors for being too stiff, laughing loudly, waving his hands, turning a serious workshop into a spectacle. Keanu sat just 2 chairs away, watching in stunned silence. A producer later revealed that Keanu leaned in and whispered, "He confuses disruption with depth." That quiet sentence marked the beginning of a Cold War. Shia didn't know it, but in that moment, Keanu closed the door. But the real collapse happened 2 years later in 2008 at a charity event, a night meant to promote kindness, generosity, and unity. Shia showed up intoxicated, ranting loudly about fake Hollywood saints. Then, out of nowhere, he joked for everyone to hear, "Keanu? He's the most boring Zen robot I've ever met." People laughed in discomfort. Keanu didn't. He looked at Shia, calm, steady, painfully honest, and said, "Cruelty isn't honesty, it's insecurity." Then he walked out of the event. Everyone who witnessed that moment knew the truth. Shia had crossed a line Keanu never allows anyone to cross. And as the years passed, Shia LaBeouf's life spiraled further. Arrests, violent altercations, bizarre performance art, public breakdowns, clashes with directors. Each headline confirmed what Keanu had felt that night. To Keanu, this wasn't rebellion, it was irresponsibility, a dangerous force that poisoned the creative space. In 2014, a major studio attempted the impossible, pairing the two actors together for a high-budget film. Keanu didn't hesitate. He declined within minutes, saying only, "not a healthy environment." That was the closest he ever came to naming a Shia publicly. Since then, there have been no greetings, no mending, not even a polite nod at premieres. For Keanu Reeves, Shia LaBeouf remains someone he will never allow near his world again. If Shia LaBeouf represented chaos, then Jared Leto represented something even darker in Keanu Reeves' eyes. Pain disguised as art. Keanu Reeves has worked with many intense actors, but Jared Leto was different, not simply intense, but extreme, unpredictable, and, according to multiple crew members, genuinely dangerous to the harmony of a film set. Long before Hollywood whispered about the tension between them, before fans speculated about why they never appeared together on screen, the seeds of resentment had already been planted. It began the moment Keanu heard stories from crew members who had just worked with Leto. Instead of preparation and professionalism, they described disturbing tales, dead animals sent to co-stars, erratic demands for constant rewrites, refusal to break character no matter the situation, and an environment so tense that even experienced crew felt on edge. For Keanu, who values kindness above ego and humanity above performance, this was the ultimate violation of what filmmaking should be. He said quietly to a friend, "You can't harm people in the name of art." That was the moment the invisible wall between him and Leto was built. But the breaking point came in 2011 during a closed-door casting meeting. A director enthusiastically suggested putting Keanu and Leto together in a psychological thriller. Before the director even finished the sentence, Keanu exhaled sharply, not angrily, but with a kind of exhausted disbelief, and shook his head. Then, in one of the rare blunt statements of his entire career, he said, "Chaos isn't a technique, it's a warning sign." Silence filled the room. Everyone knew exactly who he meant. Meanwhile, Leto's behavior continued escalating, injuring himself on set for authenticity, sending grotesque gifts, and demanding that suffering become part of the filmmaking process. To Jared Leto, this was art. To Keanu Reeves, this was exploitation. By 2016, studios quietly stopped proposing pairings between the two. Keanu refused every attempt. No drama, no public feud, just a calm, resolute no every single time. Today, the distance between them is absolute. They avoid conversation, eye contact, even greetings at industry events. They stand in the same room like two planets locked in silent opposition, never touching, always aware. For Keanu Reeves, Jared Leto represents one thing he will never allow near him: art that hurts people, art that takes instead of gives, art that mistakes cruelty for genius. Among the 6 names on Keanu Reeves's private list, Val Kilmer is the one whose reputation arrived long before he did. Unlike the others, Keanu didn't need to meet him to feel the storm approaching. Hollywood had already whispered enough warnings. Kilmer is brilliant, producers would say, but he'll burn the room down to get what he wants. Keanu didn't believe it at first. He always gives people a chance to show kindness, discipline, humility. But with Val Kilmer, that chance vanished almost instantly. Their tension began in the early 1990s, a time when both actors were frequently considered for the same roles in action and drama films. Audition rooms became battlegrounds of personality. Keanu, calm and steady. Kilmer, fiery and relentless. One day, Kilmer watched a portion of Keanu's audition tape. He scoffed loudly and said, "He's too simple. Acting requires fire, not stillness." Keanu remembered that line not because it hurt him, but because it revealed exactly what Kilmer valued: ego over craft, dominance over collaboration. But the real rupture came in 1995 at a studio dinner. A young cinematographer was being praised for his talent. Kilmer interrupted, complaining that the cinematographer didn't light him like a legend. The room went cold. The young man looked humiliated. Keanu stepped in gently, trying to diffuse the tension, but Kilmer snapped, "Don't play wise monk with me." That was the moment Keanu froze, not with anger, with disappointment. He whispered, barely loud enough for anyone to hear, "You don't belittle people you depend on." For Keanu Reeves, that sentence was the final nail. Respect wasn't just broken, it was crushed. In 2004, when a major studio pitched a Keanu-Kilmer pairing, Keanu rejected the offer instantly. No meeting, no deliberation, just a firm, unwavering no. They've walked past each other at events ever since. No hostility, no forced politeness, just a cold, permanent distance. Where others see talent, Keanu sees something else entirely. A man willing to set the world on fire just to stand in the spotlight. Among all the names on Keanu Reeves' unspoken list, Sean Young is the most unusual, because Keanu doesn't avoid her out of anger or rivalry, but out of something far more draining: exhaustion. With Baldwin, the problem was humiliation. With Shia, it was irresponsibility. With Leto, dangerous extremism. With Kilmer, ego. But with Sean Young, the issue was something Keanu finds hardest to handle: unpredictable, explosive chaos. Their very first encounter happened in 1989 during an industry rehearsal. Sean arrived late, slammed her script on the table, and immediately accused the director of favoritism. Within 3 minutes, the entire room was upside down, energy shattered, tension rising, people looking around helplessly. Keanu watched, silently absorbing every detail. He didn't have to say anything. That moment told him everything he needed to know. But the real collision came in 1994 during a casting session. Both Sean Young and Keanu were on the short list for a project under the same studio. As another actress finished her audition, Sean openly mocked her performance right in front of everyone. Then she turned to Keanu and said, "This business loves quiet boys like you. They're easy to control." It wasn't a compliment. It was a dismissal, a way of implying his calmness was weakness. Keanu didn't argue. He simply closed his notebook, stood up, and left the room. Later that night, he confided to a close friend, "Cruelty disguised as confidence is still cruelty." And over the years, Sean's public behavior only confirmed his concern. Alcohol-related incidents, storming film sets uninvited, clashing with directors, accusing producers of conspiracies, turning press events into complete chaos. To Keanu, it became a clear pattern. Every project she touched came with collateral damage. Then in 2006, the final line was drawn. Keanu was offered a thriller script, one he was genuinely interested in. But when he discovered Sean Young was being considered for a supporting role, he declined immediately. A producer tried to reassure him, "She's cleaned up." Keanu simply replied, I don't want people hurt again. No insults, no public callouts, just distance. Cold, controlled, permanent distance. Because for Keanu Reeves, Sean Young wasn't an enemy. She was a storm, and he had learned long ago that the safest way to survive a storm is to walk away before it hits. Now that all 6 names have been revealed, a deeper, more unsettling truth begins to emerge, one that stretches far beyond personal grudges or clashing personalities. Keanu Reeves isn't a man who keeps lists. He isn't a man who holds anger, seeks revenge, or nurtures old wounds. He forgives quietly, walks away gently, and rebuilds himself in silence. So the fact that 6 actors, 6 legendary figures of Hollywood, made him draw an invisible line that he has never crossed again tells us something profound about the darker side of the industry. Because each of these 6 did something deeper than offend him. They violated the principles he considers sacred. Alec Baldwin humiliated and endangered people. Shia LaBeouf turned honesty into cruelty. Jared Leto disguised harm as art. Val Kilmer worshipped ego above humanity. Sean Young brought chaos wherever she walked, different actions, different personalities, but a pattern is so clear Keanu could not ignore it. To him, acting is more than pretending. It is a collaboration, a trust, a quiet agreement that everyone on set, actors, crew, assistants, lighting teams, interns, deserves respect and safety. When that trust is broken, the art collapses. And Keanu Reeves has survived too much loss, too much pain, to surround himself with people who destroy the very foundation of storytelling. Hollywood, for all its glamour, hides countless fractures beneath its polished surface. And these 6 names, these private decisions he made across 3 decades, expose something audiences rarely see: the price of maintaining integrity in a ruthless industry. Over 40 years, Keanu has faced tragedy, betrayal, loneliness, and fame he never asked for. But through all of it, he held on to one belief: you can be talented without hurting people. You can be great without being cruel. You can rise without stepping on others. That belief guided every film he chose, every partnership he accepted, and every silent refusal he ever gave. And these 6 names, they became lessons, reminders of the world he refuses to be part of. Hollywood is a place obsessed with noise, big premieres, flashing cameras, loud interviews, explosive headlines. But the most powerful wars inside this industry are the ones fought in absolute silence. And Keanu Reeves, the man known for speaking softly, has mastered the art of silent distance. He never publicly attacked Alec Baldwin. He never mocked Shia LaBeouf. He never exposed Jared Leto's dangerous methods. He never confronted Val Kilmer's ego. He never shamed Sean Young for her chaos. No, Keanu never chose the public battlefield. Instead, he chose something far more difficult: quiet refusal. Producers would pitch ensemble casts, studios would suggest pairings, directors would dream of mixing different Hollywood giants, and Keanu would simply shake his head, not angrily, not dramatically, just a calm, steady no, backed by decades of experience and unshakable principles. Because to him, distance is not avoidance, it is protection. Protection for his crew, protection for the story, protection for the environment of trust he believes filmmaking requires. Over the years, insiders began to notice the pattern: how projects featuring Baldwin were dismissed instantly, how scripts involving Shia were turned down in mere minutes, how the mere mention of Leto's name stopped negotiations dead, how the idea of working with Kilmer was off the table for decades, how every production connected to Sean Young was rejected before discussions even started. And Keanu never explained himself to the public. He didn't need to, because the truth is simple. Some actors act for themselves. Keanu Reeves acts for everyone around him. That's why he protects sets from chaos. That's why he shields young filmmakers from toxic veterans. That's why he refuses to participate in environments where disrespect thrives. He doesn't fight back. He simply walks away. And Hollywood has learned to respect that silence more than any spoken confrontation. In an industry where pride screams and ego roars, Keanu's quiet boundaries became louder than any scandal. Now that the truth behind these 6 names has been laid bare, a deeper question emerges, one that fans, critics, and insiders have quietly wondered for years. What does all of this say about Keanu Reeves himself? Because when you look closely, these rivalries aren't really about anger, they aren't about revenge, jealousy, or wounded pride. In fact, they reveal something far more profound about the man behind the legend. Keanu Reeves doesn't hate easily. He doesn't lash out. He doesn't explode, blame, or retaliate. He absorbs, evaluates, and chooses peace every time, which makes his decision to walk away from 6 major Hollywood figures even more significant. Each actor represents a boundary he refuses to let anyone cross. Alec Baldwin, humiliation and reckless behavior. Shia LaBeouf, cruelty masked as honesty. Jared Leto, pain disguised as artistic method. Val Kilmer, ego that crushes others. Sean Young, chaos that destroys trust. Different personalities, different sins, but they all break one rule Keanu lives by. No art is worth hurting people. This is why his story feels so different from typical Hollywood feuds. This isn't a scandal. This isn't drama. This is a quiet manifesto, a philosophy shaped by loss, compassion, and decades of surviving an industry that can destroy the soul as quickly as it creates fame. Keanu Reeves has endured unimaginable tragedy, the loss of loved ones, the pressure of sudden global fame, the loneliness that comes with being admired more than understood. Yet he still chooses kindness. He still chooses empathy. He still chooses humility. And these 6 rivalries, they are not about hatred. They are about self-preservation, about protecting his peace, about maintaining an environment where art can flourish without fear. So when Keanu walks away, he's not rejecting a person. He's rejecting a pattern of cruelty, a pattern of ego, a pattern of destruction. In a world where stars are encouraged to shout, fight, and perform their conflicts for attention, Keanu Reeves stands alone, the rare actor who proves that silence can be stronger than war.